Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Stanisci of CFL Talk. Welcome and thank you for being here. You're watching the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Don't forget to subscribe to Candid Stanisci 1030 on YouTube. Now on CFL Talk, David Morassutti. David, how you doing, my friend?
Not too bad. It's we wouldn't call it the final stretch, but we're getting there.
It is the final stretch. Actually, you're 100% right. It is the final stretch. It's just the stretch requires 2 games to make the determination. But this game, these 2 games this weekend offer, I think, 2 very interesting. How shall I say? Suppositions on how the games will go, because I don't think it's been a while. I think it has been a while since we've seen 2 finals, East and West Division, that are as unclear as these 2 in a long while, in my opinion. There's always been a going in. That doesn't mean the favorite wins, but there's always been that definite favorite, and there's been that definite underdog, either in one of the games or both, but never none.
Yeah, no, that's certainly true. Like this in past years, we could constantly say, "Yeah, we think this team will definitely make it."
Yeah,
I
Winnipeg.
I have a feeling of who I think is going to make it, but can I say for certain? No. I could see any of these teams winning this weekend. That's how exciting I think this weekend's going to be. It's just because there's a lot that we don't really know about yet.
There are a lot of reasons to validate all 4 of these teams moving forward. There are plenty of reasons to validate it. You can validate it through the way they played this year, because of the other teams and how they played. None of these teams has been outplayed the whole year. None of them.
Yeah.
As far as when you look at the full context of the season. And while there has been persistent dominance in stretches for all 4 teams, ultimately they've come down to being pretty close. Both the East and West teams that are playing, the team that finished in second, it finished in second as close as you possibly could, really. So points wise, statistically, how they finished the year total points, they finished about the same. And as I said, Saskatchewan came out of the gate quick. Winnipeg did not. The Argos came out of the gate kind of, without their starting quarterback, and Montreal came out of the gate, firing. We don't know, and I guess this game's going to tell us, David. Did Montreal's finish the season reflect in reality who that team is today, as opposed to the team that started the season? That's the first question I have.
No, for sure. I mean, when I was writing my preview, it's hard to forget. I mean, it kind of does with the season being so long. Montreal was 10-1 at one point.
Exactly.
They finished. What do they finish with? 10,
11, 12.
Sorry, 11, 5-1.
Yeah, 11-5. That's right. They had the tie. Sorry. Yeah, 11-5.
So 11-5-1. They were 10-1. So that means they finished the season since that point 1-4-1 in those finals. Like, it's not exactly. I'm not saying it's the worst.
This is not the Montreal Alouette team that went into the Grey Cup last year.
No, I feel like they've taken a little bit of a step back. Oh, sorry, they had 2 wins in that stretch because they were 12-5-1. I was like, the math didn't completely work there.
Still, that record doesn't speak to a dominant team.
No, like the thing is defensively, they're a good team. They're a good team defensively. Offensively, they barely had more points than the Red Blacks. I'll tell you the teams that all had that had fewer points than scored than Montreal. The Calgary Stampeders, the Ottawa Red Blacks. That's it. Oh, and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But the big difference, Winnipeg has way fewer points given up than Montreal, so they're still in a good position when it comes to the point differential. But every other team scored more than Montreal. And look, defense is important to win championships, but you also need to be able to give your defense a chance.
Yeah, it's a yin and a yang thing, right?
Yeah, you can't be one-sided in a way.
Well, in the case of football, it's yin yang and yang.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I just invented a saying. Because there's three options that you have that help you win the game, and that's without talking about coaching, discipline, and but the three phases matter. Going into this game, David, I don't see, as far as the Argos are concerned, I don't really see them really on a good roll with special teams in the way that they have in the past. Like this season, we had games that special teams basically won for the Argos.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that. I don't see that going in. We know who Iralahu is. We know he can kick a lot of field goals. We know he came close to. He tied the most field goals in the season. Missed a kick in the last game, or he would have beat the record. We know that as far as kicking is concerned, while Montreal doesn't have the same cachet with the kicking, I think it's as good as the Argos have.
No, that's true. No, I think you're right on that. When you look at them, I was looking at CFL.ca did their like breakdown of the like the positional matchups and who has a favor, right? Quarterback, I believe Chad Kelly got the quarterback. Interesting enough, Walton Fletcher was given the benefit over Kadeem Carey, which I found to be interesting considering how good Kadeem Carey has been. Receivers, Toronto had the edge because Montreal's really banged up there. But most of the strength for Montreal falls on the offensive line, linebackers, and secondary.
Right.
Toronto has a lot of that focus on the offense. This really could be offense versus defense in a lot of ways heading into this game.
Absolutely. You're not wrong.
So it's very curious to see how that all matches. I mean, we saw a little bit, right? If you're looking at where Toronto's strength lies, you look at that game against Ottawa, right? A team, they put up 58 points, albeit they scored two. They had two returns for a touchdown on defense, but they still put up over 40 points on offense against a pretty good Ottawa defense, right? One that I think is kind of equal to Montreal in a lot of ways. Maybe Montreal's got a little more experience, a little more star power to it, but kind of comparable in some ways.
So you're saying the level of difficulty for the Argos to penetrate defensively will be about the same this week?
Well, I think there's a better roadmap for Toronto against Montreal than there was against Ottawa because Montreal has struggled against the run, especially against Toronto. Toronto put up 214 yards on the ground the last time these two teams played each other. That's a recipe. That's a good recipe if they can play a physical brand, keep the ball on the ground, and not force Chaco to throw it a bunch of times. Toronto likes that. They like it a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. No argument there. Toronto, on the opposite side of the equation, their defense, kind of, I don't know whether it needs to find itself in the middle of a game because they have difficulty coming out of the gate well. This year, they've had it more often than they have in the past. They've had difficulty coming out of the gate well. And then, having said that, then they have the issue that, at least in recent games, they've had difficulty in locking down the other team's offense. We saw what happened to Ottawa, Edmonton. In fairness to the Argos, and I mean that sincerely, in fairness to the Argos, those comebacks all came after they had a lock or close to a lock in second place. In other words, they defined the season. It was defined already. So in the same way, I'll say with Montreal that the season was pretty well defined for them early, and they did play like it was defined for them early. What we'll find out um, in this game is, are they ramped up enough to start this game quickly? And when I say they, I mean the Argos and the Alouettes. I really think there's a question, and an important factor in this game will be which team gets off to a quick start.
Yeah, well, that's certainly true. Toronto has always been a slow starting team. Generally, they like to, I think, figure out what exactly the other team's doing before they really try to put their stamp on the game. But Montreal's like that too. Look at last year in the East Final. They let Toronto go on this big drive down the field, and then boom, that one interception kind of turned the tide for them. So it's very interesting to see how which team finds a way to take advantage of some opportunities early for sure.
Yeah, there's going to be some questions, and those questions are going to be important. Um, I really enjoy the idea that we really can't. There's no prediction. So in essence, I think we as viewers of the game, I think more than I'll add this to the earlier comment that I mentioned about not knowing who the favorite is. This is probably the most opportunity we've got to watch a game just for what the game is. Do you know what I mean? I don't think anything that happens is going to be a surprise. Of course, there's always surprises, and the definition of surprise is relative to how big a crucial play happens, right? But I think we're all getting an opportunity here to just watch two teams play, and really not know for sure what the positives and negatives are. We can run up a menu, right? We can create a list. We can think we know, but we really don't know, because do we really know of all the three phases in the game for both the teams? Do we know how they're going to play based on what we've seen recently? We know the Argos have a really good offense, but the question is, was that when the Red Blacks weren't playing really well, and they weren't consistent with that offense as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's the consistency is key, right? You can't have moments where you're in a bit of a lull on offense because you open the doors, right? Unless your defense is playing really well and can nullify what your offensive mistakes. Like certain teams can take chances on offense because their defense is able to step up.
Yep.
Unfortunately, last year that didn't happen for um Toronto last year, and in a way, it almost didn't happen until the second half, really, against Ottawa.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Things changed. The question is that because the Argos turned it on, or because Ottawa got tired? Because needless to say, when or emotionally tired too. When you have a game and you're well in hand in the game, and you've got it, you're dominating the opposition. We go back to the time, right? Time of possession, and it only takes a few seconds, and you lose. You lose because you had a couple of small bad moments. It's got to be really disheartening, right? And I think that was part of what caused the Argos' momentum to be, I think, more than it could have been, and quicker.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like when you look, yeah, that Ottawa game, like Ottawa had that, like they had almost doubled the time of possession in that, even almost triple at one point. Like the only reason why maybe Toronto would have felt that they would have had a good chance in that game is because, um,
We haven't talked about it on this show, the squib.
well, yeah, not only the squib, but they were trying their best to keep Toronto's offense off the field. That was Ottawa's plan, right? Problem was they didn't have a running game, so they couldn't really play that time possession game in the way a lot of teams would want to do. And so, yeah, and then eventually they're like, I don't know. I don't think we got a for sure answer on that. But that game, that play was so bizarre that Toronto was like, we might be in their heads a little bit here. Like they talked about how that was a momentum switch, but to me, it also was like they were Ottawa was worried that Toronto, because of how good they were offensively, they needed to find a way to throw them off, try to get some few more points. But Toronto knew they were getting touchdowns, and Ottawa was getting field goals. And when you're doing that to a team, it builds over time and it gets demoralizing. And that squib kick almost confirmed that, I think.
The squib almost said that they didn't want to give the Argos the ball with that little time left. So what they did was they gave the ball in a better place, which is crazy, which is weird.
Weird.
The other thing about the running game with Ottawa, the Argos were dealing with basically receivers running the ball. With Montreal, they're going to have a guy that you mentioned was given the advantage over the Argo running game. I don't know why that is. I believe that Carey has more yardage and statistically is better than Fletcher.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is, Montreal doesn't have they don't have the run game like that Toronto does, in my opinion. Right?
Fletcher generated all by himself. Is that why he's getting a nod?
Yeah, maybe in a way. But Montreal likes to save their players too. They don't want, like they did it with Stanback last year. They didn't want to work them too hard, leave them fresh for the end of the run of the season. I just think it's just the way that the makeup of their team is as well.
Yeah, no, but I think if you ask the players whether it's right or it can we can comment on it. I mean, I think running backs like getting the ball. They like touches, and they like those touches to be consistent over a season. They don't want to. I've seen it. We've seen it when teams decide, well, we're not going to run today. Running backs don't like that, and it's part of their momentum, part of they're basically getting up to speed. And I got to tell you, Kadeem Carey in the first half was not so good for the Argos. In the second half, he was outstanding. They need more of the second half Kadeem Carey. If they get that Kadeem Carey early in the game, you're going to see at least Kelly try some deep stuff, some big plays. You're going to see big plays on the menu more often, and we saw one thing about him. Well, anyway, I'll leave it at that. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think Montreal wants Chad Kelly to be impatient and force things that aren't there. Try to do things that maybe aren't, right in the moment. That's what happened last year, right? Get a little impatient. You have that first mistake. What happens when you make a mistake? You try to make up for it, and eventually it snowballs. Whether they're going to be able to do that again this time, I don't know. If you can't. History repeating itself twice is never a sure thing, right? You tend to learn from it. So I'm sure Chad Kelly, possibly he's going to make mistakes. I don't think it's going to be to the effect that he did last year.
Well, when he looks at a play and a receiver, I think what he's probably been told and what he's learned to do, and I know that it caused him because of what happened in that interception last year in the East Final. He's going to have more of a macro vision of the field as opposed to a focused vision, because Montreal does have a lot of players that do try to fool the quarterback into thinking they've got a clear play and then take it away from him. That's the one thing that the Noel defense does. They really do fake security and then snap, right? They're very good at that. That defense is very good at masking the defensive plan that they have. They do an excellent job, and that's I think the biggest lesson the Argos hope, their management team, coaching staff, and even Kelly hope that they learned from last year, and that is respect the defense of the Montreal Alouettes, but don't take too long to make a decision either, because you can try to see what's coming, but you also, the more time you take, the more that stuff is coming at you. and the less options you have.
Well, that's it, right? You want to feel like there's only one right decision, right? You want to force the issue in a lot of ways, but at the same time, we know that there's more than one way to figure things out, right? And so, um, it's going to be interesting to see how. I just think it's one of those things where if you're hoping for mistakes, you might find yourself disappointed. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, and it's the difference. It's the difference. I'll use an analogy here that has some football history and one that doesn't. And I'll say this: going for the tight window is one thing, right? That tight window, that pass, that you need to be accurate with. But you got to be careful that it's a tight window, not a skylight. If you understand what I'm saying, dropping it to a receiver against the Montreal Alouettes, that's extra time that the ball's in the air, that their defense is very good at picking off balls under those circumstances. So that it's okay for Kelly to go with a tight window, but if he uses the skylight too often, and by the way, the same thing is true for under center with the Montreal Alouettes as well. Fajardo has to throw tighter passes. When he lobs passes against the Argos, he's paid. He's paid drastically.
Yeah, no, he certainly has. And when I look at Cody Fajardo, he was more willing to do things this year. I think last year, like I felt like last year there was a bit of, I wouldn't say handcuffed, but he didn't have the full go ahead of the coach to do exactly what he wanted. This year it felt different in a lot of ways, I think.
I think his confidence level too, where he was a little more, even if he's doing things that he was a little more, on a leash before, he knows the leash a little better now. So he can play on the leash a little better if that's what's going on still. I'm saying if that's going on, the relationship between the head coach and Fajardo is not one that started last year. It started the year before in in Edmonton. No, not in Edmonton. Geez. No, it wasn't in Saskatchewan. Anyway, it's one that started last year, and he had some history with his head coach.
Mm-hmm. It's never easy to do. No, it's to earn the coach's trust is one thing, but it's actually when you have a coach that um, worked with you for years as well.
It helps a lot, and like he's obviously somebody that looked for an opportunity to win like every other quarterback. So now he comes into this game with the belief that he can do it again, which affords one a little more patience than they have when they haven't won. Kelly has that. Even though it was a short-term takeover of the team, it was a takeover of the team at a critical time. The same thing for Fajardo, and the same thing for Caleros in the other game. And the thing that Trevor Harris, he's of the four quarterbacks, he's the one that has the most to prove. If we can switch over to the Saskatchewan Winnipeg game, Caleros has physically been challenged. His offensive line has created a situation where his physical well-being has been tested this year, and we'll see how well Saskatchewan to do that. I'm going to start with that being the key for Saskatchewan is getting to Caleros.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. I mean, we saw early in the year. I don't even think it's all also getting to Caleros. It's taking away the safety net. Take away Brady Oliveira. Make sure that you are forcing Caleros to have to throw the ball a lot,
when he
because the
doesn't
more
want
he
to.
has, the more he has to drop back, the better your chances are to disrupt them in a lot of ways.
Yeah, he's sorry, just taking my medication. I apologize.
No, please do.
Supposed to
We
take
don't.
it at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's a little later. Got a little busy. So the game for me, the interesting part of this game is going to be the road fans. I don't know how many fans from Saskatchewan are going to be able to get tickets at that game, just because it's a playoff game, and Winnipeg fans had an earlier start to getting the tickets. It's going to be interesting because whenever that game is played, there is a decent fan base of Saskatchewan, as they do when they go, every game that they're on the road. That'll be interesting. The other thing that I find, I'm waiting to see. Well, Brady Oliveira missed the first few games. This Winnipeg team would have had a better record if he had started the season with them. So this Winnipeg team's a lot better than we give it credit for. I think. I believe.
No, I agree. I think that this is a team that had to re-identify itself. I think every team in a way in this weekend, but I feel like the two teams of the West kind of had to re-identify themselves. Look, Saskatchewan went through a period where they uh, didn't have Trevor Harris, and they had to figure out a way to stay afloat without him. Winnipeg, it was our defense was struggling. A lot of changes on the defense there. The offense was making too many mistakes. Oliveira wasn't exactly at his best at that point. And then eventually it all figured itself out. Veteran teams sometimes also take time to kind of get things going a little bit. They know when it's time for them to, okay, we got to really step on it and get back to it. And I feel like that's what's happening with Winnipeg there.
As a team, I agree 100% that the veteran aspect is an advantage for Winnipeg. They've been there. This will be the sixth. If they win, it'll be the sixth Grey Cup they've gone to in a row. That's a pretty dominant team, a pretty good team, proving how good they are on a yearly basis, consistently. But I just see eventually teams break through. You know what I mean? Eventually teams break through. They break through because they want it more than the other team. No matter how much we want to think that every team wants it the same amount, there are some things that push you over the top sometimes that are just circumstances that usually negative things that motivate you to do better. And I think the negative thing here is Winnipeg has to be, I said statistically they're not a favorite, but emotionally I think they're the favorite, right? They come into this game with the experience and the belief that they're the best team, and when Saskatchewan fans, like Montreal fans and the Montreal team last year, felt that they proved that they were better than they're being given credit for. And I'm not saying it's just chalkboard fodder; it's also mental fodder. I like the motivation that Saskatchewan's going to have in here, and they've got a coach who is really good at motivating his team, and I think that'll be a factor that they'll use to their advantage.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, everyone's right now, everyone's doubting. In a way, they're kind of doubting Saskatchewan's ability to beat Winnipeg. And when you're in a lot of ways, it's like Montreal last year, Toronto. Oh, there's no way that they can beat them. There's no way that they can beat them. And to me, that's dangerous. To me, that's a dangerous way to look at things. You can't go into it thinking that it's going to be simple to beat a Saskatchewan, because Winnipeg's done it so many times before. Because you know what, you can stumble if you're not focused. I don't think focus is gonna be a problem for Winnipeg, but I do think that this is this is not going to be an easy task to just say that that Saskatchewan's gonna lay, just because history would suggest that it's not easy. It's also a different Saskatchewan team.
Absolutely, it is. And they have put together a team, right? That without Willette is not as good. They put together a team with a quarterback like Trevor Harris, whom without Trevor Harris, this team's not the same. And I think the one disadvantage that Saskatchewan has is I don't think they have the same depth as Montreal. Sorry, as Ottawa. We'll say it eventually. Winnipeg has. Boy, oh boy, have I got strange stuff in my head. Yeah, that's something I think that is another reason why Winnipeg has an advantage, because I think they have a little more depth in security and in playing the game. Now, last year's Winnipeg team, I would have given even more with Drew Brown as the backup. Right now, they have a backup who's very experienced in the Canadian Football League, has been around to a lot of teams, and probably I know that I felt he was good when he was in training camp with the Argos, and he threw a couple of passes and looked really good. So he has I think he has the ability. It's just, does he have the experience if something happens to Caleros? That's one place where the two teams are even. They need to keep their quarterbacks healthy.
Yeah, no, that's especially true. I
Clean.
think clean is not easy at all. And I don't think the thing is, much like even Winnipeg, as good as they've been, they've been guilty of not doing it clean either. That's the other thing.
Exactly.
Right? And so
Agreed.
I would say that it's just experience has favored Winnipeg for so long. But guess what? The team the coach they're going up against, and we haven't talked about this really. Nobody's really talked about it.
Do it.
The coach they're going up against was the first one to hit the chink in the armor, right? When Toronto went to that Grey Cup, that game was, a lot of people would have said, I don't see, I don't know if Toronto's gonna be able to do it. They don't have the experience that Winnipeg does. Winnipeg's been there and done that. True, but guess what? Corey Mace, he found a way to stifle that defense. Stifle the offense of Winnipeg. That was not an offensive showcase.
Well, the final 3 minutes of that game against in the Grey Cup is a perfect example of what you're talking about. Winnipeg did what they're famous for, the big play at the end of the game, snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. In that game, the Argos went toe to toe with them and made big play. They, it was like I raise you 500 and I'll call you and raise you 500. We saw that happen at the end of the game. Now, I only saw it happen after the game because I didn't watch the game. We were in the tunnel. We had an idea of what was going on, but later I had a chance to see it, and the excitement, just the way the fans were reacting, David, it was amazing. The simultaneous cheers and stunned reaction was amazing in the tunnel. Having not watching the game, but you knew something weird was going on. It was an interesting way to not see the final minutes of the game.
Oh yeah, I know for you especially, but those final minutes were so chaotic, but you just needed to just make sure that ride the wave almost, right? They kind of talk about that a few
Be the way.
a bit, right? Be the wave, or however they were trying to.
Quentin is basically trying to say is make your own wave.
Yeah. Don't go against it either, right? And so I do think that when you look at this game specifically, I see this as a game where, or I look at this game for Saskatchewan as there's going to be moments where you make mistakes, where things aren't going to go your way. Can you find a way to not let it overcome you? Can you find a way, whether you get off to a great start or if Winnipeg is making a big comeback, can you avoid letting it overcome you in a lot of ways?
It's a good question.
Right? That's a huge question. I hate to say it because I know you're a big fan of his, but Trevor Harris, he got to a Grey Cup before, but we know what happened in that Grey Cup when he was overmatched.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if he has the receivers that will complement his ability to be under center. We will also see um, what he's been able to do this year. Like the one thing that was always called into question, and I'm as guilty as anybody to call it into question earlier in his career, is that red zone, deficiency, that red zone inability to cash in. He was well aware of it. It's not like if you talk to him about it, he doesn't like it, but he doesn't deny it. So he knows that's something that he's been working on. And if the Saskatchewan experience is any indication, especially recently, he's he's found a way to take the team from the red zone into the end zone. And you know what? That's something both these teams are going to have to do. We've seen Saskatchewan this year with goal line stands. We've seen Winnipeg with goal line stands. We've seen them defend very well. So, the offenses here have a real challenge. And because both defenses have a good reputation that they want to maintain. And it's been a very interesting year watching the discipline that Saskatchewan has displayed. They've only had minor little experiences where their lack of discipline peaked through this year, where the year before that it was like constant. So their head coach has made accountability important, so much so that he was called to task at the end of one game because he needed to be made accountable because he lacked the discipline. So it's practice what you preach, and that's the kind of leadership every team benefits from.
Mm-hmm. No, discipline is key. But I do think that when you look at these games, right, moments have played a big part too. I go back to um that Grey Cup in 2022, big moment that just didn't work, right? And so I do wonder, can Winnipeg overcome those moments too? Because as much as when we look at this game at Winnipeg's history, they've been guilty of having bad moments hurt them, and I think that's a symptom of not managing the game right. When you look at in Toronto, there was an interception, right? Not being able to stop that kickoff. I think it was a punt or kickoff that led to putting Toronto in the position to take the game over. When you look at the final drive, I think there's a lot of things there that they wish they would have figured out that they did not.
Absolutely. They, then I guess the other thing that is motivating the Saskatchewan players, and this is something I'll mention as a person who pays a lot of attention to Saskatchewan. One of the biggest problems Saskatchewan has, one of the benefits of them having a good playoff and making it to the Grey Cup, is the fan base. For whatever reason, some think it's because the tickets are too expensive, or I don't know, maybe they've grown frustrated with the team. I don't know what the reason is, but fan attendance has been dropping in Saskatchewan, which isn't a good thing if you're Saskatchewan. They're carrying a pretty big debt on that stadium. This game and the result of this game could help them get back to the place where they were when they first opened the stadium for the first few years, and that is full houses every game. They need those full houses, so there's a bit of pressure on them, not as much as there was on BC to make the Grey Cup as the host franchise, but a little bit to improve, management there knows that they need to do something positive here to improve their stock in the community.
Mm-hmm. No, that's certainly true. Because I think if Winnipeg loses out, they're gonna start. Some are gonna start wondering if this team has that ability. They've gone to the dance so many times, right? They've won a couple for sure, but has the team now also lost a step in that they've they're what they believe is the right path to winning doesn't exactly translate, right? Has the game plan gone stale in a way? So
Well,
that's going to be the big one. They have a statement win over Saskatchewan. It's going to say a lot about their chances heading into the Grey Cup. I think people will always take experience, a team that's been there, done that for sure. But they also want to see, is this the same old Winnipeg team?
yeah, and then what happens in these games before the Grey Cup game is that the cost of winning, the physical toll taken on playing this game. We have two teams that this is their first playoff game, and two teams that it's their second. And even though it's only a two-game, get to the Grey Cup challenge, right? In, in those two or even the one game, there's a lot of physicality that can do a lot of damage, and recovery period afforded the teams based on the schedule may not be enough for some players. So that's another issue that can impact this game, as we were talking about the health of the quarterbacks and also the players, and how that affects on the winner. How that affects the winner if they make it to the Grey Cup. We've seen cases where teams have won that division final and gone into the game without certain players. We saw it last year with Winnipeg, and we know that they were hurt because they lost their main linebacker, right? Their big guy. That didn't help them in the game that they played against Montreal. So there's those issues that become part of factors within the game that's being played, and by virtue of leaving the game unhealthy, how the next game needs to be played. So football's a real tough sport. Um, I think the more physical game will be Saskatchewan and Winnipeg. Not that the Montreal Toronto game won't be. Montreal's notorious for playing very physically, and Toronto's going to have to meet them.
Oh yeah, there is a lot of emotion. I think physicality is the big one. Toronto. I think Toronto has to know that Montreal's going to try to be very physical,
Oh
very
yeah,
aggressive, and they got to match it. They have to match it. They've been done a good job. Like, look, they've done a good job against teams like Winnipeg. They've beaten Montreal, but it means something different when there's more on the line. Montreal was in a similar position to Toronto, where they were off to such a good start. They were on such a streak, and then it kind of dipped near the end. So Montreal how realizes they got to go from here. For those that are maybe listening on, from down to now they got to bring it up again. Toronto is already up there, so that Montreal has to think we have to now bring that energy that Toronto already has right now.
yeah, absolutely. The energy level is going to be important, and we talked about earlier in this broadcast how it'll have to come out of the gate. That energy level's got to come out of the gate, and this game, watching watching these four teams, we've seen all four put themselves in a position where they're leading and then end up losing, looking like they're going to lose and then end up winning. It's going to be interesting. I don't think not only because of the CFL, no lead will be safe in these games. I don't think there's going to be. I know there's some thought. Some people think that this game could get away from one team, a team, and the opponent run away with it. I'm just not sure at this point in the season with these four teams. I just can't believe they won't be equally up for the game and really work hard towards staying in the game. I really think all four of these teams are capable of keeping the other team at bay, and the bend not break principle, right? But again, It depends on those big plays. That's the variable that I keeps haunting me is the big plays. Which teams are going to make the big plays? Because all four of these teams, again, they can make big plays.
I do too, and that's what makes these games exciting. You know, you're not getting a team that maybe was a bit fortunate to be there. These teams all have the have gone down the path where they deserve to be there, and they play an exciting brand. I mean, Winnipeg plays a little more of the grind, slow grind, but when they need to make big plays, they will make big plays. They're all fun. No, Winnipeg's a good fundamentally sound team too, right? And I think that gives them a leg up as well in a lot of ways, right? So
Absolutely.
whichever team also plays the right way, that's you can play exciting, but you have to play the right way.
Yeah, well, you can't play footloose and fancy free, right? There has to be the beauty of football is it's a team sport,
Mm-hmm.
and execution execution's very very important. The only um, the only thing that's more important than execution is availability, because without availability there's no ability. And so that's hopefully all four of these teams are going to come in with a great version of themselves. And if that's the case, I think it's going to be an awesome game. I'll let you finish off on the two teams and what you think. I'll just say I think it'll be Toronto and Saskatchewan. Now I know I cover the Argos, so that looks kind of sketchy. Um, yeah, but you know what? I'll live
I'm
in
going with the two.
sketchiness.
I'm going with the two teams that have had the better showing of late. Toronto, I think, has looked really good. I'm leaning Winnipeg, but I think Saskatchewan wouldn't surprise me if Saskatchewan wins either. That's more of a toss up than Toronto. Much I just think Montreal's good. If they win, I won't be surprised. I just think the way that Toronto's playing right now, they've got the right formula. Yeah, the defense needs work, but the offense is able now to pick up the defense too, and I think
Yeah,
that will
they're
allow
they're
the
they're they're their
defense to
share,
play more confident too. With the offense playing so well, I think they will play a lot better for that reason.
and they've done it. They've done it without the dependable Janarian Grant,
Mm-hmm.
who's due to break out. And I'm just wondering if that's going to be
An
something that
X factor. Toronto's got those game breakers.
yeah, they got that guy that could do it, and Montreal's done it too. Mind you, Janarian Grant's been a little better at it, so it'll be really interesting. Yeah. So, well, you know what? It's okay if you pick at Winnipeg. That'll give you the one up or the one down. So you're
Very well.
creating a line in the sand, my friend. That's what you're doing. We have another bit of news that I'd like to talk about with the last couple of minutes that we have, and that is, of course, the announcement today that the Calgary Stampeders will be hosting the Grey Cup not this coming year, and that means 25. They'll be hosting 26. Now, that's interesting because there's been this long going conversation that, the Stampede, well, their stadium, McMahon, isn't really Grey Cup friendly.
No, it's not. But maybe this will give incentive for the organization to finally put some money. They don't need to do maybe not a whole new stadium, but at least try to get some better facilities there. They need it.
Well, it's all about bringing the stadium into the new millennium, right? And they didn't do it in the new millennium. So now we're getting down the road in the new millennium. So, it's all about the boxes, private boxes. It's all about, you know, the fan experience, right? Whatever that is, however you want to define it, that's very important. The last time they had it was in 2019. I was there. I got to tell you, Calgary's a beautiful place.
It is.
Um,
Great place.
and it was fun. Um, uh, the fans there are awesome. Calgary fans are awesome. When you go there, I felt very welcome there by the people in town. It was a fun experience. It was, and I hope to go there again. But of course, that's a couple of years down the road. God willing, I'll be there. There's there's the thing about Calgary is that now this kind of creates what we talked about with BC, and that is you've got to be able to at least look like you're going to represent in that game. And right now, this year, um, I don't think anyone can doubt that they're in an actual rebuild, where they're probably looking for a new quarterback. You know, they're looking for new coaches. It seems the head coach is going to stay, but they are going to be looking for a lot of new coaches. So I don't know, David. This is it. The team is at the crossroads.
A lot can happen in 2 years, though, and we've seen. And there's teams like I look at Winnipeg; they're not getting younger; they're getting older. There will be opportunities if Calgary goes about this the right way, where they can get themselves back into position. But they have to. They cannot. I repeat, they cannot believe that the status quo is good. There has to be now a mandate that they got to get back to what Calgary's all about.
I think changing the coaches is an admission to that fact.
I think so too, but it can't just be the coaches, unfortunately.
Well, the thing is, the general manager is the head coach.
Yep.
And he knows survival says that he needs to remove a bunch of people. There has to be an impression of change and a fresh start. Now, the only way that I see it being any more of a fresh change is if he's fired. And I don't think he'll be firing himself. Now, he might move himself up. I don't know if that's the case. If there was somebody, a candidate, he was released, in my opinion. I don't think you bring him back now to be the head coach, or do you? I don't know. I think it's important to note that the Calgary Stampeders have not been very good for too long, longer than that organization and fan base is accustomed to.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. I think we're getting the red light now.
Okay, so then why don't we call it a show?
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, David. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing live Mondays at 4 p.m. Special showing today here on Friday. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network for CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer. Please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching. I'm Candid Frank.